Having surpassed 1,000 completed anime, it's time to review my old favorites and find out what holds up. I'm Sacrabolic, your envoy of hope, and this is Anime Favorite Search. Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Works Season 2 starts off with the show actually chilling out long enough to give the characters some time to talk to each other about stuff other than the Grail War, and gets us to know the characters a bit better. So I really appreciate probably the start of the season because of that. Because Season 1 so desperately lacked any sort of actual character work, then Season 2 does, I would probably say, all of the heavy lifting in that. We do get to see a bit more of the relationship between the assassin boyfriend to Castor and Castor. We don't get to see a lot of Ilya on this, but what I will say is you do get a bit of an expansion on Heracles when he fights Gil, with the line that I just always remember, even if I might not remember word for word, which is, even in death you surpass your own legend, because Hercules he has 12 lives, but he gets a fucking 13th one just to try and punch Gilligan. Fucking fantastic moment. We actually explore Lancer a bit more as a character, than that he has more than 3 scenes in the entire show, even forming an alliance with our central cast here. Saber is definitely left to the wayside in this route, probably because she already had her route, and of course the majority of the focus of this entire season is on Shiro and Archer, who are of course the same person. And I think Archer coming as a future version of Shiro to confront himself on his past ideals and the failures of those ideals is actually kind of clever and interesting, and I appreciate how it parallels Shiro's ideals of self-sacrifice with the almost identical ideals that Saber has, which is even more of a reason why Saber and Shiro make a better couple. But the show doesn't really explore that, and I will get back to its lack of exploration and its ideas in a second. Because another thing the show also does is contrast Shiro's viewpoints about self-sacrifice and essentially the ultimate form of selflessness to the viewpoints of Gilgamesh, who essentially is the exact opposite, being the ultimate form of selfish and believing that humanity has no inherent value, seemingly to want to reduce it to a more manageable level so that he can be in control of whoever survives the apocalypse that he creates. Unfortunately, a thing I've noticed with a lot of the Ufotable type moon adaptions, and I'm not sure if this is an issue with the source material, is that the way they portray these philosophical ideas, these counter viewpoints, is that a character will just go on a monologue and then no other character really has a rebuttal. They bring up philosophical points such as the values of selfishness and selflessness, but they don't actually discuss these points. So it ends up kind of coming off cheap and underbaked, in that they're not exploring the ideas they're presenting. And that's an issue not just with Unlimited Blade Works, but was an issue with Fate Zero, and is also an issue with Garden of Sinners. Another issue I have is that Kodamine and Gilgamesh still kind of come the fuck out of nowhere. Gilgamesh, you see images of him, you see him periodically appear throughout the course of the original season, but you still don't really have any idea who he is as a character unless you're coming from Fate Zero, which this is supposed to be its own standalone route of the original light novel it's all based on, so you don't know why you fucking would be coming from Fate Zero, and so he's not really well established in this specific anime. And, of course, Kodamine is supposed to be a big deal, a big villain. He even has basically the "I killed your father" speech like he did to Shiro in the Saber route, but he does it to Rin this time because apparently he also killed Rin's father, and how he's big evil. But the dude's in, 3 scenes. If he was undercooked in the original Fate Stay Night anime, this motherfucker isn't even in this, pretty much. So the sudden, having the entire Grail War, setting up Castor as the major threat, because that's what Unlimited Blade Works does. In Saber Route, Berserker's the big threat, in this one, Castor's the big threat, and then they fucking kill her, and just like the first time, it seems like they just run the fuck out of plot, and then Gilgamesh and Kodamine have to show up at the end to create villains. And, again, again, they're there the entire time, but like it doesn't fucking matter. They're not well enough established. You don't know them as characters like you got to know Castor and like you got to know Ilya in the original series. They're just such shitty villains. I will also say that Gilgamesh's dialogue is a lot less rapey in this. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it is something I've noticed. But I think my major issue with Unlimited Blade Works is that all of the characters, like Rin specifically, is supposed to be the Rin route, and hilariously enough, I feel like Rin is, if anything, less explored and developed than she was in the original Studio Dean anime. Like, she feels more like an archetypical boring tsundere in this than she did in someone else's route. I do not come away with this anime using just Unlimited Blade Works as reference material with any real idea what the fuck Rin is about. Like, her personality is basically stripped away in this. Honestly, despite exploring Shiro's mindset, he is also sort of less personable. He's just kind of depressed the entire time. It's not interesting. They don't explore Saber. You get, like, the big issue with Unlimited Blade Works is despite the fact that Season 2 explores its characters better, it doesn't explore its characters well. I have to say that the relationship between Shiro and Ren is probably more realistic in that they're just 2D teenagers. That's like, you're hot, I'm hot, let's fucking get together, we're in a tough situation. But I don't really think that realism can be good, but it doesn't really add any sort of enjoyment to me. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's an aspect that really doesn't hit in the same way that the sort of tragic from two different worlds relationship between Shiro and Saber goes. I will say that the final episode, which is post-Grail War, has a very minor action scene, because of fucking course it does, where Rin fights Luvia. And on that subject, I fucking love Luvia. She's in 2 goddamn scenes in this entire fucking anime, and I already love her. She does appear as a semi-major character in the spin-off Prisma Ilya, where Ilias Viel is a magical girl, but they only get 2 scenes with her, and I already love her. Anyway, I will say that the relationship between Shiro and Rin is very cute at the end, where they both go to college, and I will say, as opposed to the original, this seems like it's setting up to a sequel that I honestly don't know if it actually exists, because you have this whole Magic Academy, you have this like 3-year time span, you have Shiro getting invited to join like the Magic Association, then turning it down, and you have this guy that just seems fucking evil who strikes up a conversation with him. This doesn't go anywhere as far as I know. Like, I think there is a sequel, but it's like a weird combination of all 3 routes, so maybe it has something to do with something. Anyway, I don't fucking know. Anyway, the point is, this focuses so much more on the action than the characters as opposed to the original one, and there's nothing inherently wrong with this. Obviously, it does its action scenes very well. I like the conflict between Shiro and Archer, and of course, you can't tell me that Shiro finally manning up and fighting Gilgamesh isn't badass. Like, Shiro stepping up is a fucking highlight of the show. But whereas the first one tried to be more of a tragic romance, this tries to be more of an action show, and unfortunately that's just not what got me interested in the Fate series in the first place. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of hope. Bye-bye!